The galaxy had forgotten humanity. Its name was lost to time, erased from history by the very forces that now ruled every corner of the known universe. Yet in the depths of forgotten space, a discovery was about to change everything on the barren planet of Tyrellian. An ancient excavation crew of the Galactic Empire uncovered something extraordinary, a relic buried deep within the ruins of a long-abandoned city hidden beneath layers of dust and neglect. The planet had long since ceased to be of interest to anyone but the most determined archaeologists and explorers who sought to uncover secrets that had long been abandoned. Captain Rylon, a young but ambitious leader of the Imperial Archaeological Division, stared at the small object in his hand, a data crystal, its surface worn from centuries of neglect, but still intact the moment it was activated. The air in the room seemed to crackle with a palpable energy. The archaic device hummed to life, casting a faint glow in the darkened chamber. The crystal began to project a series of images, holographic diagrams, strange symbols, and a sequence of coordinates that pointed to a place deep in the unexplored reaches of space. Rylon's heart raced as he carefully studied the holographic display. The coordinates were not to any known world or system. They led into the unknown, into the outer fringes, where even the Empire's most daring expeditions had not ventured. The data displayed more than just directions. It hinted at something far more unsettling. Hidden beneath the surface of these records was the possibility that humanity had not perished in the great wars of the past, as all historical accounts had suggested. No, it appeared that some had survived, scattered across the stars and hidden from the prying eyes of the Empire itself. Rylon knew what this meant for the Empire, what this discovery could do to their complete and unchallenged rule over the galaxy. The whispers of humanity's survival had long been dismissed as superstition legends of old, but now he held the key to something far more dangerous, something that could unravel the Empire's carefully constructed narrative of galactic superiority. If there was even a shred of truth to the information in this crystal, the implications would be catastrophic. He immediately contacted his superiors, and soon the Emperor's most trusted officers were informed of the discovery. News spread like wildfire through the ranks of the Imperial leadership. They gathered in the darkened war rooms of the Imperial capital to discuss what they would do with the knowledge that humanity had survived, and more importantly, where they might be hiding. A darkened silence fell upon the room as Grand General Volkar, the Empire's supreme military strategist, leaned over the holographic map, showing the coordinates from the data crystal. His eyes narrowed. His voice was cold and calculating as he spoke. "We cannot allow this to remain a secret. If humanity still exists, it is a threat that must be eliminated." The Emperor's eyes gleamed with the cold fire of someone who saw a threat to his power. He considered the implications for only a moment before issuing an order. "Send a fleet, immediately find these survivors, and extinguish them from the galaxy before they can rise again." The fleet was assembled quickly, a powerful armada of warships ready to plunge into the depths of unknown space. The crew was unaware of the full scope of their mission. They only knew that they were to find the remnants of a forgotten species and destroy them. But as the fleet left the capital and journeyed into the unknown, a shadow of doubt began to form among the officers. What if humanity had a far greater presence than the Empire had been led to believe? What if they were more prepared than anyone anticipated? And what if the very technology they discovered in that forgotten ruin had the power to turn the tide against the Empire's overwhelming might? The hunt for humanity's hidden legacy had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The fleet surged through the vast emptiness of space with a cold precision only the Empire could command. Warships sleek and deadly cut through the stars toward the coordinates found in the ancient data crystal. The Empire's commanders had no illusions about the danger they might face, but none had anticipated just how elusive humanity's survivors had become. The galaxy had long since swallowed up every trace of their existence, or so it seemed, but now, with every passing moment, the hope of finding them, of finally uncovering the lost legacy of humankind, seemed more and more like a dangerous reality. Captain Rylon stood on the bridge of the lead warship, his eyes scanning the swirling star fields beyond the viewport. Every report, every transmission from his officers painted a picture of a galaxy steeped in silence. The systems they visited showed no signs of human activity. The planets were barren and desolate. Nothing but lifeless dust drifted in the wake of their investigation. They had scored every known star system and beyond, but found no trace of humanity. The fleet pressed forward, its search relentless. As they ventured deeper into uncharted territory, it was as if the survivors had disappeared into the void itself, somehow evading detection by even the Empire's most sophisticated sensors. The unease among the officers grew palpable. Whispers of failure began to spread through the ranks, and still no answers emerged. Days passed, and Rylon began to wonder if they were on a fool's errand. Was the crystal merely a trap, a fragment of lost human history, designed to send them on a wild chase through the stars in search of something that was never really there? But then a breakthrough came. It was Lieutenant Dara who first detected the anomaly. Her voice was trembling with excitement as she reported, "Captain, we've detected something strange, a faint signal originating from a nearby asteroid field. It's barely there, but it matches the frequency of the data crystal's origins." Rylon's pulse quickened as he turned toward her station, his eyes narrowing in on the readouts. The signal was weak, but unmistakable. There was something out there, something human. It could be a derelict ship or a long-forgotten outpost hidden within the asteroid field. But one thing was clear: the search was far from over. Within hours, the fleet had surrounded the asteroid field, 100 warships gleaming in the cold starlight as they methodically swept through the debris field, searching for any sign of the source of the signal. Rylon's heart pounded in his chest as he ordered a series of scans. The technology aboard the Imperial ships was unrivaled, and yet the source of the signal continued to evade them. It was only when a stray probe ventured deeper into a dark corner of the field that the truth revealed itself. An old ship, far older than anything the Empire had ever seen, a relic of humanity's golden age, camouflaged among the asteroids, its hull battered and scarred, but still intact. The signal had originated from there. The ship was alive with ancient systems and long-dormant technology, slowly powering back to life. Rylon's eyes widened as he gazed at the scans of the ship. Its configuration was unlike anything in the Empire's vast archives. This was no ordinary warship or exploration vessel. It was a piece of human history left to drift in the void, forgotten by all but the stars themselves. A surge of excitement rippled through the fleet as they closed in on the ship, but Rylon's mind raced with questions. What was this ship doing here? How had it remained hidden for so long? What other secrets could it hold? And most importantly, were there still survivors aboard? As the warships encircled the derelict ship and prepared to board, Rylon knew one thing for certain: humanity's hidden legacy had just become something far more than a myth. It was a threat, and it was only a matter of time before the Empire would have to face it head-on. The air was thick with the smell of stale oxygen and metal as the docking bay of the ancient ship slowly came into view. The derelict vessel loomed in front of Captain Rylon's ship, a silent monolith from humanity's forgotten past. Its surface, marked by countless years of neglect, the hull was pitted and scarred, but there was something undeniably unsettling about it, something that made Rylon's skin crawl as he gazed upon it. The ship wasn't just abandoned, it was waiting. Inside the warship's corridors, every step echoed in the silence. The boarding team moved cautiously, their weapons drawn as they advanced through the eerie stillness. The ship's systems were offline for the most part, but faint lights flickered on the walls, their weak glow barely enough to illuminate the shadowed halls. The officers moved carefully through the corridors, their steps light, as though the ship itself might react at any moment. Rylon's mind raced with the possibilities, but one thought burned brighter than the rest. What had become of the crew? The first signs of life came when a small group of Imperial technicians breached a sealed door deep in the ship's heart. Within a forgotten cryogenic chamber, they found what they were searching for: a sleeper pod, its occupant still preserved in cryo-suspension, despite the centuries that had passed since its activation. The figure inside was human, unmistakably so, yet the face was unfamiliar. The body was still in perfect condition, untouched by time. Only the faint hum of the cryogenic chamber disrupted the stillness of the room as the technicians worked to restore power to the ship's systems and bring the occupant back to life. For Rylon, The significance of the discovery hit him like a jolt to the chest. Humanity had not only survived in hiding, it had preserved itself frozen in time waiting for the moment when they would rise again to challenge the Empire. As the cryo chamber began to power up, the air in the room seemed to shift. A cold breeze swept through the chamber, and the suspended figure began to stir. Rylon watched intently as the figure's eyes flickered open for the first time in hundreds of years. The woman's eyes were sharp and focused despite the disorientation. She must have felt upon awakening. She looked around the room, taking in the strange surroundings before focusing her gaze on the Imperial officers standing in the doorway of the chamber. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice hoarse but filled with an unmistakable authority, her gaze fixed on Rylon with intensity that left him momentarily speechless. Rylon stood frozen for a moment, taken aback by her sudden presence, but quickly regained his composure. "I am Captain Rylon of the Galactic Empire. We found your ship and your people. You've been lost to history for centuries," he explained, his voice steady though inside he was struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The woman stared at him with cold eyes as if she had heard these words 1,000 times before. "I know who you are," she replied. "I know what the Empire has become, and I know what you're here to do." Her words were deliberate and measured, as though she had expected this confrontation for as long as she could remember. Rylon felt the weight of her words as if they carried a heavy burden, one that spoke of humanity's hidden knowledge and strength, of a race that had been waiting to return for far longer than anyone could have imagined. "I'm Sarah Greaves," she continued, "and you've just awakened the sleeping giant." Rylon's eyes widened at the mention of her name. Sarah Greaves was a legend, one of the last great tacticians of humanity's final days. She was a hero from an age long past, and now she stood before him, the living embodiment of humanity's hidden legacy. She stood tall despite the years of isolation and the strange awakening she had experienced, her gaze unwavering as she sized up the Imperial officers who surrounded her, every movement calculated and deliberate, as though she had already made her decision on how to deal with them. "Do you know why we hid?" she asked quietly. "Why we chose to disappear from the galaxy when the war ended?" Her voice softened, but there was a pain behind it that no one could ignore. Rylon could only shake his head. He had no answers, only more questions. Now that he had uncovered a living piece of the past, the mystery of humanity's disappearance was no longer just a story to be uncovered, it was a challenge to be met. "I'll show you," Sarah said, her voice low with determination. "I'll show you what humanity has become, and why you should never have awakened us." The atmosphere aboard the ancient ship had changed overnight. With Sarah Greaves awake and speaking in quiet, commanding tones, the crew's curiosity gave way to tension as the once hidden human survivor began to share fragments of her long-forgotten knowledge. Sarah was not merely a relic of the past. She was a leader and expert in tactics and warfare whose mind had been honed by the horrors of humanity's final battles with the alien Zarin and other galactic forces. The Empire had no idea of the storm they had unleashed. Sarah's plan was simple but terrifying to the Empire's war machine. It was a strategy forged in the fires of necessity, designed to be carried out with no regard for the rules that had bound the galaxy in chains for centuries. She told Rylon everything: how humanity had survived in secret, scattered across distant worlds, and how they had learned to adapt using ancient warships modified with technologies that rivaled the most advanced Empire's fleets. She explained how her people had been living in isolation, not just to hide but to rebuild their strength for a time when they could rise again to take back what was lost. The rebellion would begin with small, calculated strikes, no outright war, just pinpricks in the Empire's vast skin designed to hurt, to send a message. We are not gone. The first test of this came swiftly when Sarah's resistance, consisting of a few ships and a handful of loyal human survivors, launched their first raid, a swift attack on one of the Empire's deep space supply stations, a crucial hub that fed the Empire's ongoing expansion into uncharted sectors. The attack was sudden and brutal, exploiting weaknesses in the station's defense systems that only someone with intimate knowledge of Imperial technology could have predicted. Sarah's warship, the Vigilant, led the assault, its systems powered up by ancient human tech that remained hidden and untouched for centuries. The ship's cloaking device, powered by a core of rare minerals, kept it hidden from detection by the station's sensors. As Sarah directed the strike from the bridge, her eyes cold and focused. The raid lasted mere minutes but left chaos in its wake. The Imperial crew aboard the supply station had no idea what had hit them when the first of their defensive turrets exploded and critical communication lines were severed. Sarah's fleet struck quickly, targeting the station's most vulnerable points. Before the Empire could respond, the soldiers aboard the station scrambled to activate emergency defenses. But it was too late. The station was crippled, and Sarah's forces left as quickly as they had come, vanishing into the cold emptiness of space. Back aboard the warship, Sarah turned to Rylon, her expression grim. "This is only the beginning. They will retaliate, but this time they won't be prepared." Rylon had watched the entire operation unfold, his mind still reeling from the audacity of it all, and the speed with which the attack had been carried out. The station's destruction had sent a shockwave through the Imperial chain of command, and words spread like wildfire. The Empire had never expected the humans to fight back, let alone with such precision and skill. Rylon immediately sent word back to the capital. The Emperor's eyes would certainly be fixed on this attack, and the fleet would be mobilized faster than ever to respond to what they now knew was a growing threat. Humanity was alive and had no intention of staying hidden. Days later, the Empire's response came swift and deadly. A full battle fleet dispatched to wipe out the threat once and for all. Captain Rylon watched from the bridge as dozens of warships began their approach to the human hideout located deep in a neighboring star system. But this time, Sarah was ready. Under her leadership, humanity's Galactic fleet took up positions in an asteroid field, using its natural terrain to hide and wait for every ship the Empire brought. Sarah had to counter every maneuver the Empire attempted to predict. She anticipated with uncanny accuracy. She knew how they thought, how they fought, and most importantly, how to exploit their arrogance. As the battle raged between the two fleets, Rylon could only watch in awe and fear at the ferocity of humanity's resistance. The Empire's ships were larger, more heavily armed, and better equipped, but the humans fought with a cunning and creativity that threw the Empire into disarray. At one point, an entire Imperial destroyer was forced into a collision course with a massive asteroid after an expertly timed strike from one of the Vigilant Asterisk's hidden cannons. In the end, the Empire was forced to retreat, leaving behind shattered remnants of their fleet and a growing realization. Humanity was no longer the forgotten species of legend. They were a force to be reckoned with. Sarah stood tall as the last of the Empire's ships disappeared into the blackness of space. She turned to Rylon, her expression not one of victory, but of cold resolve. "This is just the beginning, Captain. The Empire has underestimated us, and now they will learn what it means to face humanity in its prime." The galaxy quaked in the wake of humanity's first true strike against the Empire's might. The remnants of the Imperial fleet limped back to their strongholds, bruised and battered, their commanders scrambling to explain how an ancient forgotten species had managed to cripple one of their most critical supply stations and then escape without a trace. The Emperor himself was furious at the audacity of the attack, but it wasn't just anger that gripped his heart, it was fear. The reports had been clear. The humans who had attacked were not only still alive, they had the means and the will to fight back. Back at the Imperial capital, in a darkened war room, Grand General Volkar slammed his fist on the table, his voice a low growl as he addressed the council. "We've underestimated them. These humans are more dangerous than we thought. They've learned how to fight. They have the will to fight." He paused to let the severity of the words sink in before continuing. "We need to end this now before their movements grow too powerful and spread throughout the galaxy." Across the room, the Emperor sat motionless, his fingers steepled as he processed the information. Before him lay a holographic map of the galaxy, pinpointing known resistance movements, their positions scattered like sparks waiting to catch fire. He did not speak immediately, but his eyes gleamed with a cold and calculating fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was ice cold. "Prepare the fleet. We will crush them before they have the chance to organize." Meanwhile, on the edge of the galaxy, Sarah Greaves and her ragtag group of survivors were already preparing for the Empire's inevitable retaliation. They had known this moment would come when their first attack had succeeded. They had known the Empire would retaliate with everything they had, but Sarah had not led her people into the fire only to be extinguished by the first wave of Imperial warships. She had a plan, one that would ensure that humanity would never be forgotten again. The human fleet, though smaller than the Empire's, had been growing in strength and number since Sarah's awakening. The survivors of the lost colonies had heard the call and were beginning to rally around the once great banner of humanity. Together, they would form an unstoppable force, driven not by mere survival, but by the desire to reclaim their place in the galaxy. The Vigilant had become their symbol, a beacon of hope for every human who had been left behind, scattered across the stars. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Vigilant as the Imperial fleet approached their hidden base in the asteroid field. Her eyes were focused, her mind calculating and cold. They had prepared for this moment. They knew how the Empire would strike, where and when, and they were ready. But Sarah wasn't the only one planning in the shadows. As the Empire's massive fleet entered the system with hundreds of warships and destroyers intent on wiping out every last trace of humanity's resistance, Sarah gave the signal. Her fleet had moved into position, hidden behind asteroids and cloaked in the dark expanse of space. And as the Imperial ships advanced, they were met with a deadly ambush. The first wave of Imperial forces entered the trap with no warning. The first strike came from a human ship that fired from the edge of the system, its cannons disintegrating an Imperial cruiser in the blink of an eye. As the Empire's ships tried to maneuver into battle formation, human warships emerged from their hidden positions, launching a devastating barrage of missiles and energy blasts. The Empire's fleet was thrown into chaos. Imperial warships turned to flee, but were pursued by faster and more agile human ships. The Vigilant tore through the heart of the Imperial Armada, its advanced weaponry and unrelenting precision, leaving no room for retreat. As explosions lit up the darkness of space, the Empire's flagship, a massive dreadnought known as the Emperor's Fury, appeared on the horizon. Rylon watched the battle unfold from his flagship, the Invincible, as the human resistance pushed back with ruthless efficiency. He had never imagined seeing the Empire challenged like this. Every maneuver, every strike from the humans seemed orchestrated to perfection. As the Emperor's Fury entered the fray, Sarah's voice crackled through Rylon's comms system, her tone steady but full of quiet power. "This is where it ends, Captain. This is the beginning of the Empire's fall." Rylon hesitated for a moment, unsure if the humans were truly capable of bringing down the Empire. He had seen their strength firsthand. But even now, faced with the Empire's might, he wondered if they could sustain this resistance. But as the Vigilant fired on the Emperor's Fury, and as another Imperial ship succumbed to the might of the human fleet, Rylon realized with startling clarity that the balance of power had already begun to shift. The Empire was no longer unchallenged in the galaxy, and soon it would have to reckon with the legacy it had tried so hard to erase. The battle had raged for hours, a brutal clash between the Empire's might and humanity's will to survive. But the tide was beginning to turn. The once unchallenged dominance of the Imperial fleet had faltered under the precision and audacity of the human resistance. Sarah Greaves stood at the helm of the Vigilant, her gaze fixed on the holographic display, showing the Imperial ships that once seemed unstoppable, now scattered and in retreat. Humanity had come to life once more, and with it, a storm the Empire could not ignore. Rylon stood at his command console aboard the Invincible, his hands gripped tight on the console's edges. The damage reports had been coming in steadily. Imperial ships were being destroyed or forced into retreat. Yet there was a growing unease in his chest. While the humans fought valiantly, the Empire's full might was still unspent. The Emperor's Fury, though damaged, was still operational, and the Empire's reinforcements were only a few hours away. But it wasn't just the ships that troubled him. It was the sudden shift in the galaxy's political currents. The galaxy, once united under the Empire's iron rule, was starting to feel different. Rumors of human survivors began to spread beyond the outer rim. Independent systems, who had long suffered under Imperial control, now whispered of rebellion. The actions of Sarah and her forces had ignited something within the galaxy, something the Empire couldn't easily extinguish. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos of the battle as she spoke into Rylon's comms. "This isn't just a victory, Captain. This is a message." Rylon's mind raced. What message? He had been tracking the course of the battle, trying to calculate the most efficient way to defeat Sarah's forces, but he was no longer so sure of himself. For the first time, he questioned the Empire's approach. They had relied on overwhelming force, on sheer numbers and intimidation. But humanity was no longer a scattered race to be hunted. It was an idea, a spark that had set fire to something much larger. As Rylon watched the human fleet pull back into the shadows of the asteroid field, regrouping for a retreat that felt more like a tactical withdrawal than a defeat, he could sense the shift in the air. They had made their point. They had shown the Empire that humanity was not just surviving in the galaxy. They were ready to reclaim it. The Vigilant stood at the center of the human fleet, its hull battered but its weapon systems still intact. Sarah's crew, though weary, had pushed their fleet to the brink of Imperial victory. And now, with the first blow struck, the humans would regroup and strike again. This time with the full support of the systems that had quietly begun to sympathize with their cause. Rylon turned his focus back to the tactical display. The humans have made their move, and now they will push us further. We can't afford to let them gain more ground, he muttered, trying to steady himself. Behind him, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the bridge as the ship's comm officer entered, her face pale. "Captain, urgent transmission from the Emperor's office. He demands immediate action." Rylon's jaw clenched. The Emperor's anger was never a pleasant thing to face. But this was different. The Empire had underestimated the resilience of a species it thought had been erased. And now, there was no simple solution to extinguish the fire Sarah had sparked. "They want us to eliminate the human fleet immediately," the officer continued. "All of it, Captain. No survivors." Rylon inhaled sharply. The weight of the order settled over him like a cloak of dread. For all the Empire's power, it had underestimated the intelligence and determination of humanity. It wasn't just about overwhelming force anymore. It was about something far more dangerous. As the officer awaited his response, Rylon's mind churned. He had seen what the Empire could do, but he had also seen humanity fight back with a ferocity that made him question everything he'd been taught. He wasn't sure he could follow such an order. Not anymore. "Prepare the fleet," he said finally, his voice steady but cold. "But tell the Emperor we need to be strategic. The humans are not to be underestimated. A direct assault will only fuel their cause. We will need to outsmart them." The officer hesitated before saluting. "Understood, Captain." As she left, Rylon's thoughts turned inward. The galaxy was changing. Sarah Greaves, with her memories of the past and her burning desire to reclaim humanity's place in the stars, was leading her people not just to fight back, but to rebuild. The rebellion was no longer an isolated pocket of resistance. It was a movement. And no matter how hard the Empire tried to crush it, the more it would grow. He clenched his fists. The battle had just begun, and the choices he would make in the coming days would determine whether the Empire would remain in control of the galaxy or whether humanity would rise from the ashes of its past to reshape the stars once more. The tension in the galaxy was palpable. Every action, every maneuver, seemed to be a part of a larger game, a battle for the future of the stars. While the Imperial fleet regrouped and prepared for a decisive blow, the human resistance continued to grow. The rallying cry of Sarah Greaves echoed across the distant colonies and forgotten systems, drawing more and more survivors into the fold. The Empire's grip on the galaxy was slipping, and in the shadows, a new alliance was being forged. Captain Rylon paced the command deck of the Invincible, his mind swirling with the enormity of the task ahead. The Emperor had issued orders, But his plan was no longer just about brute force. Rylon had seen the rise of humanity firsthand. He knew that mere might would not be enough to quash the growing rebellion. The human fleet, though smaller, was more cunning and more determined than anything the Empire had encountered in generations. Rylon had always been a loyal officer, his faith in the Empire unshakable. But now, with every passing day, the lines between right and wrong seemed to blur. He had witnessed the Empire's corruption and its crushing tyranny, and he had watched as humanity, its spirit undiminished by centuries of hiding, rose up with the fire of rebellion. He could not deny it anymore. The humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a cause that resonated deep within the hearts of every oppressed system in the galaxy. The moment of truth came sooner than Rylon had expected. A transmission arrived. A decrypted message from Sarah Greaves herself. She had a proposition for the Empire. Rylon watched the message unfold on his screen. It was a simple yet powerful message. "We do not wish to destroy the Empire, Captain," Sarah's voice echoed, calm but filled with resolve. "We wish to end its reign of fear. We offer you a choice. Join us and help rebuild the galaxy, or stand in our way and face the consequences. Your call." The audacity of the message hit Rylon like a shockwave. The humans weren't asking for mercy. They were demanding a choice that the Empire could not afford to ignore. His mind raced. Sarah wasn't offering peace. She was offering a chance to reshape the future, a future where the Empire's iron grip could no longer crush the life out of the galaxy. He had no doubt that the Emperor would never accept such an offer. The Emperor would rather burn the galaxy to the ground than relinquish control. But Rylon couldn't ignore the weight of the decision before him. He had been given a rare opportunity, an opportunity to choose his own path in a war that had long been fought by others. His loyalty to the Empire had been unquestionable, but Sarah's words had struck a chord deep within him. The choice between tyranny and freedom was clear, yet it was one that would come with its own price. "Prepare the fleet," Rylon ordered, his voice carrying the cold edge of resolve. "We will answer her challenge, but we will do so on our own terms." As the Imperial fleet mobilized, Rylon found himself standing at the precipice of a new chapter. The humans had drawn first blood, and now they were daring the Empire to retaliate. The coming battle would not just decide the fate of Sarah and her rebellion. It would decide whether the galaxy would continue to be shackled by Imperial rule, or whether it would break free and embrace the chaos of freedom. The war for the galaxy had become a battle for its soul. And in the heart of that struggle stood two opposing forces: the cold, calculating might of the Empire, and the unyielding resolve of a humanity that had waited centuries for the chance to rise again. Both sides knew the stakes, and neither would back down without a fight. Rylon turned away from the comms display, a new sense of purpose burning in his chest. He had his orders, but he had his doubts. Would he be able to follow through on them? Would he be able to carry out the Emperor's will, or would he finally take a stand for something greater than the Empire he had once believed in? The answer was becoming clearer by the moment. The storm was coming, and Rylon was standing at the eye of it. And no matter where his path led, he knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The final confrontation was drawing near, and the galaxy was holding its breath. For too long, the Empire had controlled everything with its iron fist, but now that control was slipping through its fingers. The message had been sent. The challenge laid bare. Sarah Greaves and her growing rebellion had shown the galaxy that humanity was alive and ready to fight. And now, the Empire would either crush this fledgling force or face its own reckoning. Captain Rylon stood in the war room aboard the Invincible, the sound of his boots heavy on the metal floor. His mind raced as the preparations for the final push were underway. The Emperor's orders had been clear: annihilate the rebellion. No mercy. But for the first time in his career, Rylon felt the weight of those orders, and they sat heavy on his shoulders. The war was no longer just about the Empire's dominance. It was about the future. He could hear Sarah's voice echoing in his mind. We offer you a choice. And he knew this was not just a moment for his allegiance to the Empire, but a choice for the galaxy itself. Was he willing to stand with the Empire that had enslaved so many for so long, or would he take a stand for something greater? Rylon's gaze drifted to the tactical map. The human fleet was positioned in the asteroid field near the outer rim, preparing for a battle that would determine everything. But even as the Imperial forces mobilized for an all-out assault, something in Rylon's chest twisted. He could see the power of the rebellion in the eyes of the men and women on his ship, many of whom were now questioning their place in the Empire. Fear was beginning to take root within the ranks. The time for thinking had passed. The battle was now. Rylon stepped forward, his voice steady, his decision clear. Prepare the fleet for engagement. Full battle readiness. The Empire will not be undermined. As the Empire's vast warships moved into position, the final moments of preparation were filled with tension. On the Vigilant, Sarah's eyes were focused as she studied the tactical displays, her mind racing as she assessed the approaching threat. She knew the battle would be brutal. This was the Empire's last chance to break her rebellion once and for all. But Sarah had a plan, and it wasn't about brute force. It was about strategy, precision, and the one thing the Empire had underestimated: the resilience of humanity. The fight began with a roar as Imperial warships blasted forward, their weapons firing in a furious storm. The battle unfolded in the black void of space, a sprawling clash between the two fleets. Energy beams cut through the darkness, and explosions illuminated the cold emptiness like flashes of lightning. The humans fought with unrelenting determination, their ships darting through the asteroid field, using every advantage the terrain offered. The Empire's massive warships, slow and unwieldy, were caught off guard by the speed and unpredictability of their adversaries. For every Imperial ship that fired, a human vessel would slip past and strike with deadly accuracy. The Vigilant became a storm of fire and fury, leading the charge and cutting through the enemy lines. But just as it seemed humanity might gain the upper hand, the Emperor's fury entered the fray. The massive dreadnought loomed like a titan, its weapons unleashing a storm of destruction. Rylon's flagship joined the battle, bringing the full weight of the Empire's wrath to bear on the human fleet. Sarah stood tall, her resolve unwavering, as the Vigilant dodged a barrage of fire. Now, she whispered, almost to herself. She had studied the Empire's tactics, and she knew where they would strike hardest. The trap had been set. With a coordinated attack from the hidden flanks of the asteroid field, the human fleet unleashed a wave of devastating missiles, targeting the weak points in the Emperor's Fury's armor. The dreadnought's shields flickered, unable to withstand the onslaught. The first cracks in its hull appeared, and the tide began to turn. Rylon watched from the Invincible as the Emperor's fury faltered. His heart pounded in his chest. The Empire's pride was crumbling before his eyes. He had been prepared to destroy the rebellion, but now, seeing the truth of what was happening, the weight of his choice pressed down on him. The Empire had failed. It had failed to understand humanity, to understand the fire that drove them. As the Emperor's fury collapsed under the human assault, Rylon made a decision that would change everything. He gave the order to stand down. "Retreat," he commanded, his voice laced with finality. "We're not going to win this." The Imperial fleet faltered as ships began to retreat, their morale shattered. The humans had won, not just with their ships, but with the very spirit that had been buried for centuries. As the last of the Imperial forces withdrew, Sarah's voice crackled across the comms, a message that would echo through the galaxy for years to come. "We are humanity, and we will rebuild." The Empire's reign had ended. The galaxy was free, and the seeds of a new era had been sown in the ashes of the old.